when we talk about the openness of our clients, the one thing that openness doesn't have that definition does have is this. Write this down because it's so important. It doesn't have sustainability. Whatever is open in your chart is energy that you can borrow, you can use, but you can't hold on to it. So let's go back to the open sacral. If you have an open sacral, you know workforce, life force energy, right? You get it. If you're a projector or a manifestor or a reflector, you get it, right? You see it, you sense it, you've experienced it in all these different ways. You sense it and you understand it because of your openness. The one thing you can't do is hold on to that energy and use it over time sustainably, because that's not your design. Openness means you can't hold on to it and use it sustainably, but you can borrow it. You can borrow openness energy. So if you have an open sacral, you can ride sacral energy for a little bit, right? I had 2 clients a long time ago, a couple I coached decades ago. And he was a manifestor, she was a projector. When we did the composite chart, they did not get sacral definition. And so they loved each other very much, but they didn't have a lot of sexual juice in their connection. So they had a habit that this was their strategy. On Friday nights, they would go to a bar and have a drink. They would pick up the sacral energy in the bar and then go home and make love. That's borrowing sacral energy. This wasn't an energy that they had consistent access to. It was an energy they got to explore and experiment with. They got to experience it from the world outside of themselves, but it wasn't their natural energy that they could hold on to. So that openness gives us the opportunity to use that energy, to understand that energy, to borrow it, but you can't hold on to it. So it's not self. It's just that part of your energy and your design works differently. It works differently. And so when we start looking at how do we support our clients in crafting a narrative about who they really are, we can't tell them, oh, this is your not self. This isn't you. That's like cutting off big chunks of who you are. And then the conversation about that narrative gets really confusing. How many times have you coached somebody with an open solar plexus who's like, but I feel really big feelings. And we tell them, oh, but that's not you. Is that not them? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it is them. Maybe this is their experience of emotional energy. And if you say, oh, well, that's not you, and that's your answer, that's your not self. And then they're left with, well, either A, I hate human design, it doesn't make any sense, or B, they start to think there's something wrong with them about, well, if I'm not supposed to be emotional, but I have these big feelings, what does that mean? Is there something wrong with me? Am I bipolar? Do I have depression? Do I have a hormonal imbalance? I mean, it's not a big enough answer. And it's certainly not an actionable answer that doesn't allow our clients to really integrate all the parts of who they are. So we can't tell people there's a not self. We can tell people that the different parts of you function differently, and certain core parts of who you are part of your curriculum. And those parts of yourself, those consistent defined aspects of yourself, give you some really good clues about your purpose, about what you're here to give the world, what you're here to do in the world. These are consistent lessons. And because this is part of your chart and part of your curriculum, these are parts of your chart, parts of your narrative that you have a lifelong journey with, learning how to bring out and there's no finite place on this. This is the part of yourself that you can keep pushing and pushing and pushing and getting more and more and more authentically aligned with and expressing in a higher, faster, juicier, more wonderful way. Okay? And again, the definition often has negative conditioning that causes people to get stuck in the shadow of the archetypes of the definition. And we have to own that. And we have to own that in this human design community too, especially because if you don't, then you start to justify using your definition to act poorly. Oh, I can't help that. I have the this gate. Or I can't help that. I'm a this type. Not true. Not true. You always have choice over how you show up. And you always have choice over the narrative you tell about who you are. And your clients need you to show them what the choices are, because they want to fulfill that maximum potential. And the openness is not self. The openness means This is an energy you're going to learn about through your relationships, through your interactions with the world. And your job is to see it for what it is and to understand it and to cultivate a perspective on it and to ultimately borrow that energy when you need to, but to not draw on it sustainably, because that's the difference. Is the openness is an energy you can draw on sustainably. In my family, my mother, my father, my brother, and my sister all have a defined will center with the gate 51 defined. I have an open will center and I have the gate 51 open. I am deeply conditioned by the 51, deeply, deeply conditioned. And in fact, all the first beginning significant relationships that I had in my life as a young person were with people with the 51. I like it, right? I'm used to it. I can borrow that energy. If I need to use the archetype of the 51, I've raised a lot of teenagers. That's a really good time when sometimes you're going to use that 51 energy, okay? I can use that energy because I understand it. I know how it works. I know when the timing is right to use the gate 51 energy. But it is not an energy that I can identify with and hold on to as a consistent part of my narrative. I am not a shocking person, okay? But I know how to shock people sometimes when I need to. And that's the difference between definition and openness. Now I have the 50-27 defined, that whole channel of nurturing, right? I am a nurturing person. And that's always an aspect of my personality. But remember, it's expressed on a spectrum. That means I have life lessons about how much to nurture, how much not to nurture, when to not nurture, when to nurture myself, when to pull back my nurturing. That's my lifelong theme. But that's also really kind of not who I am. That's just the interface of my soul in this incarnation. And as I learn more and more about it, I am able to consciously use it differently, deliberately, with awareness, so that the narrative I tell becomes a narrative of my own choosing. Because you always have a choice to choose your narrative. And you always have a choice to respond. And I'm not saying that in the generator way, I'm saying that in the human way. To respond to the world in the way that best aligns with the highest potential of your chart, openness and your definition. So that's it. That's my conversation today, because we can't coach people if we're telling them the parts of themselves that they feel really deeply all the time are not parts of themselves. That's confusing. And that doesn't help them learn how to maximize the full potential of the whole story of who they are.